Hi, welcome back to my channel. What you see on this desk is a couple of planners, my bookish planner, my second bookish planner, and a traveler's notebook and a few print books. This is All the Books Monday, and what I'm going to tell you about today is what I've got going on for this week. I'm not sure what I want to show you first. So let's take the bookish planner and we're going to go back to this day here. Friday, October 1st, the 2nd, and the 3rd began October, but it ended this week, which started September 27th. So when I talked about these books in my last All the Books Monday, and so we're moving on to this week. But before I tell you about that, I want to tell you what this planner is for. I'm going to show you this planner now, and then I'm going to talk about this and bring this planner back in again in a few minutes. Every month I join in on some reading challenges. So if you can see this, yeah, it's clear. You see these tabs, TBL hard tab, which is the booklet list. This one right here is FFS, Fiction Feud Society. The team I'm on is Team Typhoon. Then I'm on the Litwitz team, Ogre. And then I'm on Reading Rivalry, Coraline. I haven't read that book, but that's the name of the team I'm on. Bookish Brawlers, Team Zach. Not very clear, but that's what it is. Literary Fight Club, and this is Stranger Things team. Then I'm playing a Kobar, which is a Court of Books and Readers. Team Shift Supernatural, I'm sorry. And then I'm on Playbookers, I think Team A or B, I'm not even sure, but that's one of the things I do every month. Is I usually join in a couple of challenges. This particular month of October, I've joined in 8, and I'm going to show you how I'm doing this. So I'm going to move this out of the way for a moment. Like I said, we're going to get back to that. This is this current week, and I'm going to just flip this over just to make it even as possible. Let's try a few more pages. I just wanted this to lay as evenly as possible. So now we're in this week. Okay, now for this week I read 19 books, but before I tell you about the 19 books, notice that I wrote down here, you can't really see that, but 13 of these were audiobooks. Why was there so many audiobooks in just a 1 week span? Well, it's because of all those challenges that I showed you in that other planner, in all of those tabs. Is these challenges have prompts, and I find the prompt, the book that meets that prompt, and sometimes these prompts work together, or one book will fit 3 challenges, or one book will fit 4 challenges, and so forth and so on. So these audiobooks that I've chosen are pretty much all for these challenges. So let's get started. Also, in wherever you see handwriting is something else that I'm doing, and I'll tell you about that later. So let's get going. I'm going to pull up my traveler's notebook so that I have some notes in case I stumble. And what we have here, I'm just moving my keyboard out the way. What we have here is the first book that I read on Monday, October 4th, which was Treasure Island. Now, Treasure Island is a classic by Robert Louis Stevenson, and he wrote it as a serial, a book, like successive stories in a serial format in 1881 and in 1882. However, in 1883, it was published as a book, and it has been republished and translated over and over and over again. This is, I'd say, my 3rd read of Treasure Island. The first one was when I was a kid. The second one was a few years ago, and then one last Monday. And basically, you have young Jim and his mother. They lost his father or her husband, and they find a map, and they want to go to this island to look for a treasure. And so Jim joins a schooner with as a crew boy, as a cabin boy, and one of the crewmates is Long John Silver, the one-legged cook. I love this story, and I'm sure I'll read it again. It's a very exciting adventure. The next book I read was Watchers by Dean Koontz. Now, I'll see if I can get a little bit closer. Yeah. The next book I read was Watchers by Dean Koontz. Now, this is my second or third, it's at least my second read, maybe even my third. I read Watchers years ago, like 15, 20 years ago, and then I read it again this past week. Now, Watchers was basically about a genetically engineered dog, a golden retriever, and also a genetically engineered creature who was known as the Outsider. In this book, the Outsider is determined to catch and to kill this golden retriever. Well, both the dog and the creature escaped from the lab, and someone named Travis found the dog, cleaned him up, and gave him a home. It didn't take long for Travis to realize that this was no ordinary dog. As a matter of fact, this dog was so intelligent, he named the dog Einstein. And now Travis and Einstein are a duo. However, during a walk one day, they see this woman in the park, and she's almost accosted by this man, or has been accosted by this man. And the dog steps in, and Travis steps in and saves the woman. Her name is Nora, and now this duo has become a trio: Travis, Nora, and Einstein. All the while, Outsider is leaving a trail of bodies, and there's also a like a hitman that's brought on the scene. His name, I think, was Vince Nasso or Nasco. Anyway, his name was Vince, and he was trying to capture Einstein because he wanted to catch him and to ransom him off to make a lot of money. And I love that story. In some places very creepy, but also very adorable when it came to Einstein. Then the next book I read was The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo. Now, last year I read one of her books, which was called With the Fire on High, but I was not at that time aware of The Poet X, which The Poet X is was Elizabeth Acevedo's debut novel, and it's about a young teenager who learns slam poetry. And she discovers she's very good at it, but the problem is that her mother is extremely religious, and it violates the principles that her mother has, so she meets a lot of resistance from her mother. Meanwhile, she's a twin, and she has a good relationship with her brother, and he's undergoing some of his own trials. Really good book, written in prose, very quick read. I actually listened to it as an audiobook, and the narrator was the author herself. Excellent, excellent book. The next book I read was Alice Walker's The Color Purple, and that's right here. Now, The Color Purple, I have never seen the movie. I didn't want to see the movie because the main character, Celie, had been abused and raped by her father, and that trauma that Celie underwent created a strong sense of PTSD in myself, so therefore I would never watch the movie. Well, I finally read the book. It was really, really good. Before she saved her sister, let me put it like this. She saved her sister from the same abuse that she experienced, but then she was married off to somebody named Mr. Now, when she saved her sister went away. I won't really say where she went. I don't want to give a spoiler. Celie thought she'd never see or hear from her sister again. However, there were a bunch of letters that Celie eventually got, and she stayed in contact with her sister through the letters. Meanwhile, Celie fell in love with Shug Avery, and we see a little bit of their relationship with all of the trials that Celie was undergoing over the years. So I really am glad that I read it, even though I waited a long time to do so. Then the next book I read is this one right here, and I actually read this one as a print book, How to Marry Keanu Reeves in 90 Days. Yeah. How is this girl, her name is, I think she's Bethany Lou. Let me see if I've got her name right. Yeah, Bethany Lou Carlisle. Keanu Reeves was a confirmed bachelor, but now he's getting married. There's an announcement about his wedding. Well, it's in 90 days, so that gives Lou 90 days to find him, to make him fall in love with her, and to marry her, not the woman he's engaged to. So she embarks on a journey to try to find Keanu, and meet him. So she's accompanied by her childhood friend, and his name is True. They both experience a serious traumatic event or tragedy, but they remained friends but never romantic interests. However, what Lou doesn't realize is True is in love with her, but he loves her so much he wants her to be happy. So if she ends up with Keanu, then he will have done his job in making her happy. It's a great romantic comedy, very, very sweet. I loved this book. Then I read the next three books, which were coincidentally, not only were they books 6, 7, and 8 of this week, they were also 6, 7, and 8 of the Hannah Rayburn series by Joanna Fluke. They were Sugar Cookie Murder, Peach Cobbler Murder, and Cherry Cheesecake Murder. And in every case, in every book, there's lots of beautiful, scrumptious, I'm sure, recipes, but also there's a murder that Hannah begins to solve. Now, Hannah's kind of in a love triangle with Norman the dentist and Mike the cop. Who will Hannah choose? It's will she or won't she? And that just goes on in these stories. But I love them. They're about 384 pages each, so they're not quick reads, but they are quick because they're easy stories. And I really enjoy them. So I think going forward, I will try to get 3 or 4 books read in this series every single month, because I do have the newest book that's coming out in 2022, or maybe even later this year. So I don't want to read the newest one until I catch up. So that's the Joanna Fluke series. The next book I read was Whatever Happened to Baby Jane by Henry Farrell. Now, no, I had never read the book before, but I've seen the movie countless times, and it's pretty much a modern, well, I was going to say modern day horror, but it's pretty much a classic now because the movie came out decades ago. But anyway, Jane Fonda and Betty Davis were in the movie, and I'm glad I read the book. The book did not terrify me because I had seen the movie so many times, but the book was a little bit more introspective than the movie and had more in-depth look at some of the other characters that weren't really given a lot of screen time in the movie, and also showed the motives behind Jane's actions. And basically, Blanche was crippled in a car accident and has been fairly well imprisoned by Jane and severely abused and mistreated, and really good book. I wouldn't go more than 4 stars, but a good book, and I'm glad that I read it. The next book I read was Kathy Reich's A Conspiracy of Bones. This is book number 19 in the Temperance Brennan series. Now, I haven't had the time, but at some point I will go back to book number 1 and read this entire series until I catch up. I think there's perhaps one more book after this, but I went ahead and read this because I needed the word bones or bones on a cover for one of the challenges that I mentioned. So I went ahead and read this one, and it doesn't stick really closely with the TV series. The TV series took a lot of liberty, but I love the series. I love this book, and I'm really eager to take the time, maybe in a few months, maybe in 2022, and read this entire series. Now, if you look at these 2 books right here, you notice that they're landscape. And this one is Love Chai and Other 4-Letter Words, and this was by Anika Sharma, and I'll tell you about it in a moment. And this is Find Me in the Dark by Dia Poirier. The reason that these are landscape, these are NetGalley audiobook ARCs, advanced reader copies in audiobook format on NetGalley, and that's why they're shaped differently than the other book covers you see here. In Love Chai and 4-Letter Words, we have Kiran, who grew up in India to very traditional, strict Indian parents. Whatever happened with Kiran, bottom line is she would marry an Indian boy or man, and that was that. And if she chose to go against her parents on that, they would disown her. Well, at some point, Kiran moved to the U.S., became a very lucrative scientific career. I can't call it right now, but she became very affluent. And in the meanwhile, she fell in love with Nash, he's from Nashville, a white man, and she knew that no matter how much she was in love with Nash, that her parents would never accept Nash. Really good story. It hit on some deep subjects because of the traditional, strict upbringing that she grew up under. I really liked it. I can't wait to write the book review. And I had already mentioned Find Me in the Dark by Dia Poirier. This is book number 1 in the Detective Hollow Durant series. And here in this case, a woman's body was found in a snowbank, and it turned out that she had been there for a long time, like months. And as Hollow starts to investigate, she discovered that the victim had led a secret life, and now Hollow's trying to determine whether her secret life had anything to do with why she was killed. Now, living a life of secrets does not come new to Hollow, because she has a secret that she had been burying, and that is the fact that her father is a convicted serial killer. And so this case comes close to home for her. And like I said, it's the first book in a new series. As a matter of fact, she has a new partner. His name is Lucas. And I can't wait for more of the series to come out so I can read it and see where it goes from here. And that's another book review that I have to write. The next 2 books that I'm going to show you are right here and right here. And this one I actually read as a print book, and this was And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. You see it's a Gothic setting where you have 10 guests, and then there were 9, and then there were 8, and then there were 7. And if you look at the back of it, 10, 9, 8, 7, and so forth. Someone in that group of 10 was a killer, because eventually there's only going to be one left. Great classic. This is my 3rd time reading it. Another classic I read by Agatha Christie, which was my first read by her, and it was called The Murder at the Vicarage. It was actually called book number 1 in the Miss Marple series. Now, I have read probably 95% of anything that had Hercule Poirot in it, but I never read anything with Miss Marple. And this book remedied that, because it was the first book of hers, and I will be reading more of Miss Marple in the months to come. Then I'm jumping back up to here. This was my only nonfiction book of the month. It was called My Mother, Munchausen, and Me. I'll bring this up so you can see it a little bit better. Okay? Nope. I'm making it blurry. Let me meddle with the... There we go. My Mother, Munchausen, and Me. This is a true story of Helen Naylor and how her mother had Munchausen syndrome and made herself ill for 5 decades, 50 years of living under this series of supposed illnesses. And Helen discovers her mother's diaries, and she gets into the mind of her mother as to why her mother led this lifestyle for over 50 years. Really, really good book. I'll tell you more about my Munchausen experience with another book in a few moments. Then I'm going to talk about these 2 books here, Magic Bites and Magic Burns. These were both by Alona Andrews. They are a husband and wife writing team, and this is the Kate Daniels series number 1 and number 2. Now, there are 10 full-length books in this series and 14 novellas. Now, I did check my library, and I was able to find all 10 books and most of the novellas. If I do continue with this series, I don't think I'm going to read the novellas. I think I would just read the full-length books. And Kate Daniels basically is a mercenary. She's having to deal with magic problems where she's at, and she has to contend with a lot of different entities in order to solve these issues. And so there's a team, and she's part of it. She has her sword and her sidekick, and that's Kate Daniels. So I don't know if I'm going to have time to get to any more of those, but that's those 2 books. Then I read The Legend of Sleepy Hollow by Washington Irving. Now, of course, I read this as a child, but I read it again just a few days ago. And this was basically about the head Ichabod Crane in The Headless Horseman, something that's definitely not new to me, something that I've been familiar with for years, and it was a quick read, only 108 pages. The last book I read in this week was A Letter from Nana Rose, and this was by Kristen Harper. And in this book, Rose was the grandmother of 3 granddaughters, Jill, Brooke, and Rachel. Rose died, and in her will, she had a stipulation that the 3 girls would have to spend 2 weeks at her beach house to determine what would happen to that house, but also to read a series of letters that Rose was going to have delivered to the girls on a daily basis during this 2-week span. And it was a very good women's fiction book, of really nice drama, and just an excellent book. I probably will give it 5 stars when I get around to writing the review. Now, as you can see, there's a lot of, and sorry for hitting the camera, there's a lot of handwriting inside of this. And I'm going to tell you what that is in a moment. I'm just pointing it out. There, all the way down. And I'll tell you about this in a minute. Well, I am doing a group read of Sherlock Holmes Volumes 1 and 2. Volume 2 is in my bedroom. This is Volume 1. So I'm currently right here. So I should finish this in about a week because I'm only reading 50, 60 pages a day. So every day that I would read one of the stories, I would write which Sherlock Holmes story it was. And that's what all that writing is there, is so that I'm tracking what stories I'm reading. A better way to track it, but I wanted to write it down so I could actually see what I'm doing, but a better way to track it, and I'm trying to find it, is this work schedule that this team I'm on called Doorstoppers R Us. Somebody created a reading schedule. So today, I haven't written it in. Today is the 11th. Today I read Reigate Squire and The Crooked Man, and I read I read the whole, The Adventures of the Resident Patient. So what I've been doing is I've been writing it in my planner, but also putting it here as I finish each story. So right now I have The Adventures of the Naval Treaty and the final problem before I move on to The Hound of the Baskervilles. But I found out that The Hound of the Baskervilles is in Volume 2, so I'm not going to go on to that. I'm going to hold until I get to that. So let me show you. So I am going to read all of these here before I read The Hound of the Baskervilles. So I'll go back to here. And so I worked out that if I want to finish Volume 1, then I just have to read 50 or 60 pages a day, and I should finish it by the 17th. And then for Volume 2, which is 739 pages, I'll read it from the 18th to the 24th. So I'm modifying the schedule for my own purposes. And so that's one of the things that I'm reading. Another group read I'm doing is Project Hail Mary. I'm going to move these pens. And this is by Andy Weir, and it's about a soul survivor and what he does in order to try to get back home. So we're reading this. We started at the 10th, which was yesterday. Today's the 11th. So I've already read chapters 1 through 6, and today is chapters 4 through 6. But I may read chapters 7 through 10 today. So that's the schedule on that one. And as I'm reading it, I'm making quick notes because we're discussing this as a group. Another book that I'm reading with a group of people is Darling Rose Gold. Remember I said I was going to talk about my Munchausen experience? Well, Rose Gold was a victim of Munchausen. Yes, this is fiction. Now, in My Mother, Munchausen and Me, it was the mother who had Munchausen syndrome. But in this book, it was Munchausen by proxy because she was poisoning her daughter Rose. So I jumped into this late, so I jumped into it on the 10th, which was Sunday. So I read the 8th and the 9th yesterday, and today is the 11th, but I'll read 9th. No, I think I've already read 9 through 12. I'm sorry. Let me check my notes. See, I'm taking notes on this one too because we're discussing it. Yes, I think I read. Pages are stuck together. Yes, I read up to chapter 12. So right now I am on time because today's the 11th, and so we've got 13 through 16 for the 11th. The 12th we have 17 through 22, and the 13th, the 23 to the end. So back to my planner. That's what you see in this, all this impossible to read handwriting, sometimes even for myself, is the notes on which pages I'm reading. And that's what I notice here. Group read is Darling Rose Gold, Project Hail Mary, and Sherlock Holmes. Those are my notes right there. So, as far as this week is concerned, 19 books in 1 week. That came out to a little, for these 19 books, it comes out to 2.71 a day. But if you add in the pages for Darling Rose Gold, Project Hail Mary, and Sherlock Holmes, I basically read 3 books a day for 1 week, if you add in those other books. But just these 19 here, just these, it comes up to 6,032 pages, which averages to 317 pages per book and 861 pages per day. Again, I'm reading the other books, so I'm really reading about 1,100 pages a day. And once I get, like, if we look at next week, which is today is Monday the 11th, I'll be reading this. I've already read some more Sherlock Holmes stories today, this morning when I first woke up, so that's why that's there. So I plan on finishing Darling Rose Gold on the 13th, and I plan on finishing Andy Weir's book on the 17th. I could have put the Sherlock Holmes book cover here because that's also the day I plan on finishing volume. I plan on finishing this book also on the 17th. I just didn't put a book cover there. So back to my notes. This brings me to 8,592 pages for the year. I think I wrote down, no, I'm sorry, let me correct myself. That brings me to 474 books for 2021, and it actually brings me to 158,092 pages. That 8,592 pages is for what I have read in October, not counting the 3 buddy reads. And that brings me to 25 books for October so far. That brings me to a different average of 854 pages per day because I'm including those other books from last week, and an average of 340 some odd pages a day. Why do I keep all these stats? It's because I do. I'm a statistician in my own right, okay? It's just something that I enjoy doing. I like tracking everything. I use Google Sheets, which is where I come up with some of these numbers, and by using Google Sheets, I translate some of it into my planner. And so, like, if you see here, these are the books that I read this year. In January, I read 39, February 41, so forth. Last month in September, I read 55. October so far, I've read 25. And there's where those numbers come up, is how many pages per month. And this spreadsheet tracks a heck of a lot more than that. It tracks genre, author, publisher, and so forth and so on. It's just part of my OCD. I love it, and it's the way it is. So that ends this Monday wrap up, or Monday all the things Monday, I think I'm calling it, or all the books Monday. I don't remember what I'm calling this, but whatever it is, I will put it in the title and list these books in the description below. But I want to thank you for your time, and I hope you have a pleasant day. Bye-bye.